We are in the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of Ecclesiastes. Who wrote this book? Solomon, yes. And who was Solomon? He was what? David's son. He was king of Israel. He was called the preacher in the book, right? He was the wisest man who ever lived. Folks, that in and of itself ought to cause us to want to read the book, shouldn't it? Just the fact that the wisest man who ever lived, other than Jesus, has written a book to us, and we have that for us. Solomon is on an experiment, is he not? And the experiment is for what purpose? Yes, to find the meaning, the purpose of life. Why am I here? And are there a lot of individuals in our world who have no clue as to why they're here? Yes. And so Solomon, being as rich as he is, having the resources that he does, not having any wars and problems going on, he can experiment as much as he wants, can he? And he does. And he experiments in a lot of different places, doesn't he? Where are some of the places that we have already read that he has done some experimentation trying to find the meaning of life? Wisdom, yes. Oh, if I can just get smart enough, right? Then I'll be a happy man. What other places? Pleasure, yes. And there are many individuals who feel that, don't they? We've talked about this idea of living for the weekend, right? I work myself to death for 40 hours a week, and then all I do is party hardy for the next weekend. And supposedly that's what they're living for the pleasure that's involved in the weekend. And where else did he look? To what? To work. Yes, to work. Okay, and there are a lot of individuals who look to work for their fulfillment, don't they? And they believe that in my work I can find fulfillment. And did Solomon build a lot of things? Oh yes, tons of things. He built houses, he built castles, he built storage places, he built barns, he built stables. Folks, he built vineyards. There's just all kinds of stuff that man built, did he not? And he just built and built and built. I would like to have the money that he spent just for the house of God, wouldn't you? I'd take that. I can retire if I had that money. Okay, but we may mention that he built himself a palace, and around the palace, what did he build? Vineyards. Remember, parks and vineyards, folks. If you're going to have a nice house, you also need some decent landscaping, right? Okay, now when you're a king, you don't just put out a couple of azaleas, right? Okay, when you're a king, you do it upright, don't you? Okay, I mean, when you put up a garden, you're talking about unbelievable gardens, hanging gardens, and the minute you put out plants and vegetation, what do they need? Okay, they need bunches and bunches of water, and they need sunlight. God will give that. And Larry may mention caretakers. Okay? Listen to what Solomon writes. Ecclesiastes 2:6 is where we're picking up. "And made me pools of water." Those weren't swimming pools, folks. Okay? Because he says they're not. "To water therewith the wood that bringeth forth trees." Wow. Barnes makes this statement. "A short distance south of Bethlehem." Does anybody know where Bethlehem is located? No. About 5 miles south of Bethlehem. Okay? About 5. So 5 miles is, for us, 5 miles is not that far, is it? But 5 miles back then, that was quite a distance, because you either had to take a horse or walk or a cart or something. So it was a good little distance during that time. But a short distance south of Bethlehem, in the valley, in the defile of Urtus, 3 pools of Solomon are still shown, and adjoining hill still bears the name of the Little Paradise. So if you ever go to the Holy Land and you go down to Bethlehem, you can just ask somebody, hey, can you take me down to the pools of Solomon? And guess what they'll do? Off you go. Take you a little road trip and go see the pools of Solomon. So they still believe that those were pools that Solomon built in order to water his crops, in order to water the vegetation, the gardens, whatever it was. Specifically, he says here, there with the wood that bringeth forth trees. Notice point B there. When a person has something of value, there are usually other things needed to sustain it. Okay, to sustain it. There was, one time I put a post on Facebook and the title of it was this: one thing leads to see, you already know that. Okay, one thing leads to another, right? You go out and you say, oh man, I sure do wish I had a boat. Right? So you go buy a boat, right? And then you need a what? Got to have a trailer to pull that boat. Then I got to have gas to put in the boat. Then I got to have life jackets because they're required if I'm going to what? Ride in the boat. I don't want to keep it on my trailer all the time, so I got to find a place in the marina to store the boat. Well, I don't want it sitting down in the water constantly because it's going to get all this junk on the bottom of it. So then I need a what? I need a lift, a dry dock to pick that boat up. Okay? Oh, this is getting ridiculous. One thing leads to what? Another. Did we go forget what? So here Solomon is. He's built him a beautiful mansion, right? Around the mansion he's put what? Beautiful gardens. But now I've got to what? I got to keep these gardens alive. So now I need what? Beautiful pools of water. Those little pools are reservoirs of water in order to irrigate his vegetation. Now here's what's interesting though with regard to Solomon, right? So here Solomon is, he says, build me a palace. So they build it. Well, now go out there and build me some gardens. So they go out and build it. So they come back into Solomon and say, Solomon, we got a problem. This garden is starting to die. We need some irrigation. We need some water in here. Well, here's what I do. I buy a boat, and I buy the life jackets, and I buy the gas, and then what do? I sell the boat. Because I can't do that anymore. Well, guess what Solomon can do? It don't matter what it is, right? Solomon could care less. When they come to him, Solomon, we need pools of water in order to irrigate all this stuff. You know what Solomon said? Build it or buy it. Isn't that amazing that money is no object when it came to Solomon? That's how much wealth this man had. No object whatsoever. Remember, he had given his heart to find meaning in life. Wouldn't you have loved to have walked the palace and the gardens of Solomon? Unbelievable. Now, most individuals in their minds think what? If I can just get a house, if I can just get a nice house, a decent house, I'll be what? I'll be happy. I'll have everything that I need, right? And that's where Solomon was. If I can just acquire all these things and build all this wonderful stuff, I'll be a happy camper. The lesson, though, is one thing leads to what? Another. My father used to have a saying, and he says this: if you buy something and you can't afford to maintain it, then you can't what? You can't afford it. Okay? You can't afford it. And that's true, isn't it? You better look at the ramifications of that purchase before you what? Before you purchase it. Man, we bought our house in Paris, Tennessee when we moved there. And they had a septic tank problem that the owners were going to have to take care of. But it was in the winter, so they couldn't do it in the winter. They had to wait till the summer. So we waited all winter long. Finally the summer came. Got to be July, and they came out. They tore up all of our yard in order to put in the septic tank. Well, the owners were responsible for the septic tank, but they weren't responsible for the torn up yard. So I had to put in $6,000 worth of sod in that yard. Okay, one thing leads to what? Another. I was about ready to sell the house and moved into a nursing home. He's put in these beautiful pools now, you know, and guys, there's no cost, right? Can you imagine what that looked like? Oh, what? Go back and do some study about the temple. And remember, there was supposed to be a place where the priests could wash before they went into the temple and did everything. Okay? Guys, you want to know what they called that place that Solomon built? Nobody knows? The sea. The sea. That's how big that pool was that Solomon built. Go read about what it's resting on, what it's sat on. Okay? You just can't, we can't imagine what this man spent as far as money is concerned. And all of it was a part of this experiment to a great extent. Notice secondly, Larry may mention the fact that not only do you need water, you got to have a lot of what? A lot of caretakers, a lot of helpers. So notice what Solomon said. I got me servants and maidens, and had servants born in my house. Also I had great possessions of great and small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem before me. You see, when you get buildings and you get things, they have to be maintained, don't they? Well, guess what? Solomon isn't going to do that. Solomon is who? I'm the king. Right? That's what we men thought when we married. You know, didn't we? I'm the king of my house. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. We saw how far that goes, don't we? But Solomon was king. And he isn't going to do all this physical labor and stuff. You've got these massive amounts of stuff. And folks, it takes a massive amount of people to cover it. Two passages, 1 Kings 5:15. And Solomon had 70,010 that bear burdens. 70,010. How many is that? 70 is what? 60 plus 10, 70,000 people to bear burdens. You don't think that man is doing some building and some work when you need that many laborers? Look at 1 Kings 9, 20 and 21. And all the people that were left of the Amorites, Hittites, Perizzites, Hivites, and Jebusites, which were not the children of Israel, their children that were left after them in the land, whom the children of Israel were not able utterly to destroy, upon those did Solomon levy a tribute of bond service unto this day. Man, there were 7 Canaanite nations in the land of Israel when Joshua entered into it to overthrow it. Did they throw every one of them out? No, they didn't. They left some there. When Solomon became king, if you were one of these 7 nations, guess what you got to do? You got to work for Solomon. Ain't that nice? And I guarantee you, Ancestry.com was going crazy back then. You did not want to be a Canaanite or a Jebusite or a Hittite. Notice that point number 2 there under B. It is difficult for us to imagine the organizational structure that was needed in order for Solomon to carry out all the affairs in his kingdom. As you get older and you start thinking about the political process, and you go through 2 or 3 elections and different things, and you sit there and you go, I wonder what it would like if I could be elected president. Okay? Well, the first thing you have to do when you become president is get you a what? A cabinet. Okay? A cabinet of officials. Guys, go back and study how many people are in a president's cabinet. Just the cabinet. It's unbelievable. I don't know that many people. Okay? I don't. We're talking about, 100, 200, 300, depending on how big you want your cabinet. And you've got to fill all those positions with one person in that cabinet to do the work. And all of those people are answerable to who? To you. Man, That's unbelievable. Can you imagine Solomon's kingdom and the expanse of that kingdom and what he's trying to do? It's unbelievable. Most likely his kingdom came with all the good and evil of all nations, didn't it? Some people were loyal, some people were committed, some people worked hard, some people were dedicated, and then you had the what? You had the lazy, you had the wicked, you had the immoral, you had the corrupt, you had the conspirators. You had all the people fighting against you. It was just a kingdom among what? A kingdom among kingdoms. But notice Solomon also says that he had other possession, great and small cattle above all that were before me in Jerusalem. Animals, folks, animals. Look at Job 1 verse 3. This is talking about Job. His sustenance also was 7,000 sheep. I want you to go out this afternoon and just buy you 100 and put them in your backyard. Okay? Just 100 and see how many sheep that is. Okay? And then build that flock up to 7,000. You're going to be bleeded to death. Okay? And 3,000 camels. Anybody ever been near a camel? Surely everybody's been near a camel. They're a lot bigger than what? Sheep. Can you imagine? Unbelievable. Just go, when you ask for the 100 sheep, just 2 camels. Okay? Bring them home this afternoon. Ace Hardware got a sale on. 500 yoke of oxen and 500 asses or donkeys. That is a boatload of animals, is it not? Can you imagine what it takes to put those in stalls, to feed those animals every day? It's unbelievable. That's just Job. And folks, Job lived early on. Did he not? He was one of the early patriarchs. His book was probably the first book of the Bible ever written. And now all of a sudden here comes Solomon. Solomon has no expenses whatsoever. The world has been conquered and it almost belongs to who? Israel at this particular time. He can have whatever he wants, as much as he wants. It's crazy. They consisted of many forms, and Clark lists a bunch of them. Oxen, neat, horses, asses, mules, camels, and such like. Sheep and goats. Wow. Cattle were involved for 2 things, folks. Number 1, assets, right? You could brag about how big your kingdom was. I bet he had a report every day on his desk, don't you? Every day, how many cattle he's got. He could just boast about that. And guess what you can do with cattle? Can you barter with them? Oh yeah, you can trade with cattle. And so Solomon did everything he could do to have as much assets as possible. Notice Ecclesiastes 2:8. And I gathered me also silver and gold, and the peculiar treasure of the kings of the provinces. I got me men singers and women singers, and the delight of the sons of men, as musical instruments, and that of all sorts. Jeannie? Oh no, this was spread out everywhere in his kingdom. His dominant residence was where? Jerusalem as the king. That's where he had his palace. And so, you know, these guys, they're kind of like entertainers and stuff today. If you go to Nashville and you go to one of the ranches that are there, okay, and you're working for, say, one of the, let's say George Strait. I just came to my mind. He's a country singer. Let's say he's got 20 horses, right? You want to know who you'll never see? You'll never see George Strait, okay? But George Strait owns 20 horses, and you work for George Strait. Now, you want to know who you might see? His wife. And that's who you don't want to see. Okay? That's who you don't want to see. And guess what they pay you? You think what? I work for George Strait. I'm his horse trainer. I get paid big bucks. No, you don't. No, you don't. They pay you pennies. Okay? There's just not much money in that stuff. And but as far as the owner himself, nah. He doesn't see all this stuff, does he? He just knows what? I just know his mind. And he knows this too. All I got to do is want one, and what? I got it. Okay, just make the right phone call, right? And that's all you got to do. So it's probably spread out all over the place. Okay, everywhere you went. What's that? Oh, that's one of Solomon's stalls over there. And, oh, man, just hundreds and hundreds of animals. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. Notice that the Bible says Solomon's wealth consisted of stores of silver and what? Silver and gold. Silver and gold. Hiram, the king of Tyre, visited Solomon when he became king. And the Bible says, and Hiram sent to the king 60 talents of gold. Man, just send me 1 talent and I'd be a happy camper. The Queen of Sheba, when she came to Jerusalem, says she came with a very great train with camels that bear spices and very much gold and what? Precious stones. You ever become a powerful leader? Guess what you're going to be blessed with all the time? Eva, you need to become a president or something. Okay? Because you can get gifts all year long. You can just be on one honeymoon the whole time. You know what? I could just see she had to get a new house to store all that stuff in. But I'm serious. There's things you just can't imagine that people will bring you just as a gift because you're a king and because of who you are. And so Solomon acquired a lot of his wealth just through what? Just through gifts that are given to him. But notice secondly, the Bible says Solomon also lists the peculiar treasure of the kings of the provinces. Man, that little word peculiar treasure. The shut up treasure. That's what that little word peculiar means, literally. Shut up. Are there certain things that kings and queens make certain that they take very, very, very good care of? Oh, yes. Have you ever heard of the royal treasure? What is that? What is it? Yes. Folks, it is the jewelry of the Crown Royal of England. Okay? Can you just get your hands on that stuff anytime you want it? It depends. Right? It depends. If you play one of the actors on OceanSide, you can. Okay? They got a hold of that stuff, didn't they? But that stuff is under lock and key. Peculiar treasure. Okay? Locked up treasure. Treasure that's what? Extremely valuable. Extremely expensive. It's just unbelievable for us to be able to imagine. Notice that it says that it was what? The peculiar treasure of the kings of the provinces. Solomon had underlings underneath him, did he not? If Solomon visited someone and he sees something that another king has, could he make it his? Oh yes, if I want it, I can what? I can take it. You're under my authority. So anything Solomon desired, anything he longed for, anything that he thought was precious, guess what? Into his treasury it came. It's just unbelievable. Notice that Solomon wasted no funds on entertainment either. I got me men singers and women singers and the delight of who? The sons of men. Are there some singers that are good and there's some singers that are great? Oh yes. There are some singers who can fill a saloon, and there are some singers who can fill a stadium. Okay? Guess what kind Solomon got? I got the stadium singers. I got the ones that were the delight to who? To the sons of men. Are there individuals who think that if they can just go to concerts and if they can just go to places of music and hear all this stuff, that life is happy? We went to a concert and it was in a, I forget where it is. It's St. Augustine. And I went to the restroom. There was a guy standing there, and he and I got to talking back and forth about this concert. And he says something like, "This is my 12th concert this year." It was only like April, and I thought, "Your 12th concert this year?" "Yeah." He said, "I just go to all of them." Okay? And there's people that are like that. And folks, that stuff isn't cheap, is it? Man, $200, $300, $400 a ticket, you've got to fight on the floor. You know, and then if you want to go meet and greet, that's another $1,000. And people do this all the time. And they think that, oh, if we just go there, this is so much fun, this is life, this is living. And so Solomon was a part of the entertainment crowd, wasn't he? Unreal. Notice too, he says this, he obtained musical instruments, and that of all sorts. Anybody in here have a musical instrument in their home that they can't play? You just have it? See, we got some people just waving their hand. Yeah, I got one. I don't know why I got it, but I got it. Okay, can't play it. Looks good. Okay, or maybe it's in, maybe it's in a closet and you hadn't seen it in 3 years. I don't know, but that's where Solomon was, right? If you're going to be hooked up with entertainers, and you see the kind of stuff they play with, guess what else I want? Man, how much is that harp? That's a beautiful harp. You play so good. I think I'll buy that harp from you. So guess what? You just buy the harp, right? I looked up the most expensive musical instrument in existence right now. It is a violin. Can you believe that? Stradivarius, $45 million. I just think, here's a guy, he's up there playing on a Stradivarius. Solomon hears him. Wow, a Stradivarius? How much is it? $45 million. I'll give you 46. Thank you. No, there was no obstacle to this man. Wouldn't you love to have seen his museum of musical instruments? Now remember why he's doing all of this. He's doing just like we do. Do we have a bunch of junk in our homes we don't need? We've all got it, don't we? Every day when Kathleen comes home, that's the first thing she said, this house is just too crowded. Just too crowded. I said, give me a price, I'll take a picture, I'll put it on Facebook. This house is just too crowded. And we still got that junk in there. Okay? We all have stuff we don't need. And I guess the question is, why did we buy it? We don't really need it. It's not bringing us happiness. We're now wishing we didn't have it. So why do we have it? You see, we thought at one time that it did provide what? A little bit of happiness, a little bit of joy. Now it's just what? I said now it's just what? And Chateau says junk. Maybe it's memories. Yes, I know. I've done a little bit of that myself. And you know what's so sad is our kids are going to go through that stuff, right? And they're going to open, if you get that lucky, they're going to have 2 boxes, right? One throwaway, one Goodwill. Well, maybe 3, maybe a keeper. I don't know. They're just going to... And isn't that what Solomon's talking about here, folks? We accumulate all this stuff, and that's what he's doing, thinking it's going to bring us happiness. And we get to the end of life, and guess what we do? We just give it away, don't we? Or we regret having bought it, and we wish we hadn't, and we sell it for dirt cheap when we paid big bucks for it. Okay? And it's just amazing. Ecclesiastes 2:9. So I was what? Great man, and increased more than all that were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. His building projects, success. His gardens, beautiful. The pools that he erected, unbelievable splendor. Everything he touched was just magnificent. And so Solomon could look at everything that he had done, and he could say what? I am great. Man, he had it all. And isn't that the life that a lot of people want today? The life of who? The life of Riley? The lifestyles of the rich and famous? That was a show that came on, wasn't it? The lifestyles of the rich and famous? And they're not. But boy, we think so, don't we? We think so. We want the millionaire's life. It's what we long for. If I just had about, $100 million, I'd be just right. Right? Well, guess what? Solomon had $100 million and more. And he wasn't what? Just right. Bev? Well, I'm not doubting that. All I'm saying is what? Yeah, what I'm trying to do is the purpose of life. Okay? And even those people who are millionaires who do great things in our world, it doesn't mean that their lives are worth a flip. Okay? Larry? That's true. It's never going to draw a U-Haul. Rodney? Oh, yes, got to. Yes, you do. And most people would say, well, I sure would like to try that adjustment. Now, here's what's interesting. You get to the very end of the verse and listen to what Solomon says. Also, my wisdom, what? Remained with me. There's some individuals who get so much and have so much. They're rich beyond measure. And guess what they lose? They lose their wisdom, don't they? I wrote down a couple of statements there. There are some people who obtain great wealth and seem to lose their minds, don't they? It's crazy. And what's that? There's some who allow their pleasures to overtake them, don't they? They become alcoholics. They become drug addicts. Their pleasure overtakes them and they become enslaved to their pleasures. There's some who who go to their graves because they don't know how to handle their riches and their wealth. It amazes me how many entertainers, and you can just start naming the names of them, who died 40, 50 years old. You know what? There's a bunch of them, aren't there? And they didn't die happy. And they died a miserable death. And yet, people like us look at them and say, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to live like they lived? And it's horrible. Jim? Well, it just depends on, can a person be wealthy and wise at the same time? Probably. Okay, Solomon was just in a very unique position, was he not? Now, Solomon was acting foolishly with a lot of this, but it was a divine experiment, wasn't it? And it'd be interesting to know how much Solomon knew about what God was doing behind the scenes. Wouldn't it be interesting when all of a sudden Solomon's gone through all of this mess, right? And did they know when they were inspired of God? Yeah. It wasn't something that snuck up on them and they didn't know. All of a sudden Solomon sits down one day and the Holy Spirit comes to him and says, Solomon, you need to put all of this in a book. And we're about to write that book. And he pens the whole book of Ecclesiastes, writing about what's going on. I wonder, did he know that that's what God was doing while he was doing it? Or was it something that he learned afterward? Okay, when he finally sat down and penned the book. It'd be interesting to know that, But fortunately, he did retain his wisdom. And he says that he retained his wisdom there. All right, we're through Ecclesiastes 2 verse 9. We'll pick up there next week.